Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. Welcome to this evening's North Area Planning Committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and I welcome viewers joining us online. Can I request that mobile phones are either set to silent or switched off for the duration of the meeting? I will now run through the protocol for member and public participation and the rules of debate. Please note that the Chair's ruling during the debate will be final. If you have registered to speak, I will introduce you by name and invite you to address the meeting at the appropriate time. The Development Management Officer will introduce the item relating to the planning application and summarise the main points. When this has been completed, I will then invite members of the public who have registered to speak on the item to address the meeting. Members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask for clarification from speakers, and the item will then be moved and seconded and debated before a vote is taken. So move on to the first item on the agenda, apologies for non-attendance.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Jelly, Councillor Riley and Councillor Sims, with Councillor Addison and Councillor Armour acting as a substitute for today.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. It is important that members come to the meeting with an open mind and have not predetermined any of the applications. Do any members have any declarations of interest to declare? No, thank you. Takes us on to agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of March 2024. Can I ask that if members are happy for me to sign these as a correct? And can I have a proposer and a seconder? All those in favour? Thank you. So that takes us to the planning applications, agenda item 4, and the first application, or the only application this evening, is NC/230000495/0 COU, which is 74 High Street, Gretton, NN173 Delta Foxtrot. Change of use from offices B1, now Class E, to dwelling house C3, Buckworth Barn. Can I just mention to members that Appendix A, you'll find an Appendix A on your desks, which is confidential and not for publication by virtue of paragraphs 1-2 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Thank you. And I'll pass over to the Planning Officer to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the Planning Committee. This is a planning application at 74 High Street in Gretton. It's known as Buckworth Barn, and it's for the change of use of offices from B1 to C3 dwelling house use. On the screen, on the overhead projector there, this screen shows a location within Gretton Village. The green is the countryside, and the grey area is Gretton Village itself. The red pointer in the middle is 74 High Street, approximately. As it just gives you an indication, it's in the centre of the village, the historic core of the village. Very briefly, this is an aerial satellite imagery of the High Street in Gretton. Again, the red dot shows the location of Buckworth Barn in relation to the High Street. There's different house styles along the High Street, but it's mainly traditional older style buildings. This is a site location plan. The application site is edged red with the red line there, which encloses Buckworth Barn. If I move my cursor, it's just here. And the remainder of the site, edged blue, in the blue line, is in the control of the applicant, Mr. Forsey. This just shows the address points for the different properties in close to the site, which may be of use later, maybe not. This is a photograph looking north towards Buckworth Barn, which is in the centre of the picture, just above the van. I'll just zoom in there. In the centre of the picture here is the actual Buckworth Barn. As you can see, it's more of a traditional building, formerly a stable, if I understand correctly. This is the site layout that was provided by the applicant in the planning application. So Buckworth Barn is at the entrance into the site. Barn House is what I understand to be the main residential property, and there are various outbuildings as well in the applicant's control. There's some internal and external floor plans just for indication mainly. The ground floor is divided into sitting room and kitchen area and dining area, and the first floor comprises 2 bedrooms, separate bedrooms, with ensuite facilities in both. This just is an external elevation. The bulk of the barn is here in terms of massing. There are no major changes to the external appearance of the building. So the key determining issues, which are set out in more detail in the report, are the principles of development, the impact on the character of the conservation area and listed building, neighbouring amenity, highway safety and loss of employment, land, premises and other material considerations. So those are set out in the report, which hopefully you've all read. The recommendation, therefore, at the front of the report is that temporary planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed in the report in paragraph 11 on page 17. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have 2 registered speakers this evening, and each speaker has 3 minutes to speak. And I'll invite speakers in order that they have registered to speak. And first I have Terry Forsey, the applicant. If you'd like to come and take a seat. And when you're ready. And so just when you're ready. Thank you.
Is that it? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe I am here 1 year after Gretton Parish Council agreed to support my family and our circumstances. Our confidential personal situation paper has been shared in advance, and I thank Bob Young for confirming that these are material planning considerations. This situation was first raised with Gretton Parish Council in April 23, 1 year ago today. Gretton Parish Council agreed to support, subject to 3 conditions. I confirm we fully comply with all their planning conditions, and this is not in dispute. The Parish Council subsequently changed track and continued to object based upon BE1 in the parish plan, and I'm sure they'll explain why. As background, listed building consent was granted in 2020 and this fully approved all changes to make Buckworth Barn an empty 2-bedroom cottage, as you've seen from the plans. As a result, it's no longer suitable as an office, so it is irrelevant to market it as such. I am now seeking change of use for the reasons we are all aware of. Gretton Parish Council has repeatedly confused the building, Buckworth Barn, with the company or business that used it. It is often interchanged one with the other in its objection, and I'm sure they'll explain their thinking. Indeed, we are only interested in the building. The positive outcomes from this application are reduced parking on the high street. When it was an office, we had up to 8 cars. This plan has 0. It's inappropriate residential setting for an office. Inappropriate layout for a post-pandemic office. All staff that were employed there used to come from outside the village, so reduces commuting to the village. It has increased availability of in-demand 2-bedroom traditional dwelling, and finally meets our personal needs. My only observation regarding the time-limited approval is on what basis has the planning office determined Susan, my wife's, life expectancy at 3 years. This situation isn't about parish plans. It's about one human being, Susan, my wife, dying in front of me. I thank the planners for finding a way through this seemingly intractable issue, and I ask the committee to support this proposal.
Thank you. Do members have any items they wish to clarify with Mr. Forsey? No. Can I invite Councillor Jackie Lilly of Gretton Parish Council? Again, when you're ready. Thank you.
Gretton Parish Council would like to thank the Planning Department for their help and support in this matter. We would like to see this brought to a mutually acceptable solution, but we have some further information that may be helpful to this committee, as well as some concerns given the history of retrospective applications on the properties within the curtilage of this address. Gretton Parish Council does not support the use of retrospective applications for planning development. Throughout our handling of this case, we have had sympathy for the personal circumstances of the applicant, but found it necessary to make the objections we have made to date to preserve the wider integrity of the neighbourhood plan. It is our opinion that the officer's recommendation continues to preserve the integrity of the neighbourhood plan, as it specifically highlights that the applicant did not provide evidence to meet the requirement of policy BE1, and the policy states, there will be a strong presumption against the loss of commercial premises or land that provides employment or future potential employment opportunities. Applications for a change of use to an activity that does not provide employment opportunities will only be supported if it can be demonstrated that A, the commercial premises or land in question has not been in active use for at least 12 months, and B, the commercial premises or land in question has no potential for either reoccupation or redevelopment for employment generating uses, and as demonstrated through the results both of a full valuation report and a marketing campaign lasting for a continuous period of at least 6 months. As a parish council, it is our view that we do not have sufficient authority to state when personal circumstances should become a material consideration. And in our actions, as a parish council, we have acted in the wider public interest in preserving the integrity of the plan. I'd like to draw your attention to the Coach House, as it is called, another property within the curtilage, which gained retrospective planning consent in 2018 for a change of use from residential C3 to bed and breakfast C1. It is on the same land registry title as Barn House, and there is apparently no separate council tax assessment according to the Gov.uk website. Given that the consent is for bed and breakfast use, and that this operation apparently ceased about 2020, we believe that the property is reverted to residential use without the relevant planning approval. If the property is confirmed to be so, then there is already accommodation on site to enable medical support to be on hand for the family. We have been informed also that Buckworth Barn is on a different land registry title to the other two properties. This is the third application for change of use for this property. And in the supporting statement for the second application, the applicant states,
Your 3 minutes is up. Could you just come to a conclusion,
right,
please?
The proposal is to create a 2-bedroom property suitable for a family or someone downsizing.
Thank you. Thank you. Your 3 minutes. Thank you. Sorry, just before you go, I was going to ask members if they have any areas of clarification they wish to make. Councillor Best.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could tell me how likely the parish council thinks it is that realistically this property would ever be occupied by a business again.
It has to be a
No, it's a
question
matter of clarification, I
clarification.
think, isn't it?
I'll ask our solicitor.
I mean,
Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know the history of the property. The parish council do. I'm just curious to know. I'm trying to understand the parish council's position on this.
Can I ask your advice? It's clarification of anything that the speakers have spoken of, not additional questions. So,
Okay.
if you want to come back on that quickly.
I would like to come back on that, and that is why part of our policy states it goes to market. It is not for us to say whether or not the property is resaleable, but the clause does state that it has a market valuation and it is marketed for 6 months. Therefore, if the market determines that it's not a viable option for re-employment, there will be no objection.
Thank you. Councillor Addison. Again, can you try to ensure that it's a
Well, it's,
point of clarification?
I just need some clarification, really, Chair, if I may. The councillor mentioned about another property on this site that was converted. We're not here to listen to that, though, are we? We're here to listen to this application, and we shouldn't really be taking that into account.
That's right. We're looking at this application. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And can I thank both speakers for attending? So therefore, for the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution, Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I will move the recommendation stated on page 9 of your agenda papers that temporary planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed in the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. So do any members wish to speak on this? Councillor Marks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to propose that we remove the first condition. It seems unreasonable to, in effect, demand that the lady leave this world by 9th of February 2027. I think it's an unreasonable condition, and we should remove that particular condition.
I think the fact that we're giving temporary permission to be granted. I
But
think that's why we need a date, not because we're saying, but I'll take officers' advice on that.
Can I?
It's unreasonable. Oh, sorry.
The temporary nature of the permission relates to the policy implications solely related to planning matters.
In relation to
Planning matters, the planning policy implications are on BE1, and that's because it's likely that the neighbourhood plan would be up for review in 5 years' time from when it was adopted. So any longer period than that would obviously eat into that sort of territory where it becomes a policy implication, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah. Also, it's just clarifying really that it's not for the applicant to reside in there, as you'll have seen from Appendix A. Councillor DL.
Thank you, Chair. I do understand that, from Gretton Parish Council's point of view, they do or are trying to uphold the integrity of their neighbourhood plan, but I think there has to be, there sometimes is an exception to every rule. And I think that from the personal information that's clearly been provided, which is very difficult, for you to come here tonight and talk to us as well, I'm more than happy to support this application based on the conditions which the officers have put forward, and I just moved that we move to the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Best.
Firstly, I just want to say I support Councillor Marks' point of view. I think I understand that, from a rules and regulations and a review of the neighbourhood plan point of view, the period that the officer has recommended seems appropriate, but it seems very inappropriate given the circumstances of the people who might be living there and looking after the applicant's wife. So I do think we should still consider at least a longer period of temporary approval. And when I look at the whole proposal, to me, I don't see, we talk about harm versus benefit. I understand the parish council's view in terms of the neighbourhood plan, but when I look at where is the harm in allowing this property to be changed, the use to be changed, I don't see any great harm in it. So.
I'm just going to ask our solicitor to speak.
Sorry, just a couple of things to clarify there. I guess, Councillor Marks, if you're moving that the first condition be removed, and if Councillor Best you are seconding that, then obviously that can be debated. But in terms of the legal framework for your decision, the plan is a development plan document, and the statutory presumption is in favour of the development plan. So development should be in accordance with that plan, as you well know, unless material planning considerations indicate otherwise. But your starting point is that it should be in accordance with that plan, and then you assess the material planning considerations and whether the personal circumstances, as it says in the report, can be a material planning consideration. As a general rule, they are not, because planning is concerned with land use in the public interest. The planning permission applies to the property, not to the person. So if a planning permission was granted for temporarily or without limit, that would be for that property and could be used by anybody as a dwelling. So it's just important to understand that, but that's your framework. So personal circumstances can be a material planning consideration, but that would be an exception to the general rule. And I think a couple of things that have come out from case law which might help your decision making in terms of this is for you to consider, do those personal circumstances outweigh the harm? And what's relevant in this instance is, does the fact that the permission is proposed to be temporary, does that affect your assessment of the degree of harm and your subsequent balancing of the considerations? I hope that assists.
Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Best. I fail to see the harm being done. And therefore the personal circumstances, which it has been ruled can be a material planning consideration, would seem to trump the non-existent harm.
I think the harm that's been referred to is the neighbourhood plan, what's written in the neighbourhood plan, which is why the application or the recommendation is for temporary planning, that temporary planning permission be granted. So it would need to change the recommendations or vote for that first if members want to then debate. Am I right?
Councillor, Chair, if I can, through you, if
Thank
I can
you.
help. Although there is a definitive date, they can come back for an extension, so it's not written in stone because of personal circumstances. So that would be considered. And obviously here, this lady is also a resident of the parish council, and the comment that the previous member made about the parish, is serving all members. And I understand the comments you're making, where you're coming from. But we could say it could be, add something like can be subject to extension if the circumstances continue, or something like that. Yeah. Thank you.
I get the feeling that members would like us to add something to the... Am I right to that effect? Do we do that now, or with agreement, we agree that the wording to be approved? Please, yeah.
Through you, Chair, and speaking with officers, as you well know, a requirement of planning conditions is that they must be precise and enforceable. I do have concerns about the proposed wording to say subject to review, where there's been planning conditions that have been drafted in such a way, the courts have held them to be unenforceable and not valid planning conditions. So I have concerns on those grounds.
But with the proposal and second the proposal that is actually in front of us, that's been proposed and seconded and is on in front of us to debate, it doesn't stop the applicant coming back at a later date if necessary to extend that date. And we are looking at the building, it is not about the person. Councillor Best.
I understand all that's been said. I guess what I was trying to avoid, because yes, I understand the applicant can come back and ask for a further term of temporary change of use, but that's not a fun or an easy thing to do. And I think I'm just trying to avoid that situation if possible. Is there any mileage or possibility of simply making it a permanent change of use?
Do one of the planning officers want to come back on that?
So I can't see any, in terms of residential, in terms of its location and the surrounding properties, I can't see any issue around a permanent change of use to residential, subject to all the criteria being fulfilled. And that's certainly encouraged.
Is that something I could put forward as an amendment or an alternative?
At the moment, you need to consider the application in front of you.
Okay.
Councillor Marks has proposed removing that.
So it won't be a moment. I'm just. Councillor Marks, it won't be a moment. If we do remove the granting temporary, it is contrary to the development plan, which was only adopted and agreed in 2021.
But if they want to, I think Councillor Marks has proposed, so if Councillor Best wants to second.
What do we take first? So, Councillor Marks, can you clarify what you are proposing, please?
My proposal was simply to remove condition number 1, which seemed to make it fixed on 9th February 2027. If we remove that condition but kept the other condition.
Well, that would make it not to be temporary. It has to be reasonable, and I think you'd have to give a date. I will ask.
They don't have to give a date.
No.
They can do that.
And why shouldn't it be permanent?
That's not the recommendation of the planning officer, but they appreciate that. So if they want to do that, they can.
Could it still be granting temporary?
No.
So, if you remove condition 1, it will mean that we won't be granting temporary planning permission. We will be granting full planning permission. Is that what you're?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I fail to see the harm. To actually refuse a normal planning application, we would have to show that there was some harm.
It is contrary to
Are we
planning.
Of course, please finish.
Our adopted plan.
Yes, but that is that harm. I don't see how that is harm as such.
Well,
I tried that.
so you're proposing that. Are you seconding that, Councillor Best?
I would do if that's possible, yes.
You can second it. Councillor Watts?
I think we need to be really careful here. We spent an entire day not that long ago as a full planning team with a very expensive consultant cautioning us against going against the development plan, the neighbourhood development plan. And I think it's a really dangerous precedent to set. Plus, those of us who are working on other neighbourhood plans hang a lot of hope on the fact that these plans stop things that we don't want. Believe me, I'm not really for the temporary thing myself. I don't understand it. What I do understand is that we have a job to do, and we've been trained to do that job, and going against it, I think, is really dangerous, despite my feelings that it's irrelevant, but that's what I think we should be careful of.
Thank you. Well, neighbourhood plans take a long time to come together. A lot of hard work goes in. It goes out for consultation, and it comes back to us, and we've adopted it, and not that long ago either. So, Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. I know I can see what everybody's saying here, but is there no way we're just taking out February? And so you see what I mean? Because it's saying the deadline 9th of February. Can we just do the 2027? See what I'm saying?
I think you still need to be precise. So if you want to have a different date for the temporary planning permission, and you're saying 2027 generally, then are you saying 31st of December 2027? So, you know, that I think just to be precise with the exact... Yeah.
What members feel about that instead?
We've got a proposal and we've got a seconder. I think we do have to be careful what we're... So we've got a proposal on the table for the temporary planning permission. That's been seconded. It's now been superseded by one to remove condition 1. If we vote on that and it falls, we then go back to the substantive motion. So if we move to the vote on the amendment, and members will get the opportunity to vote on that, if they want to keep it as a temporary planning application, they'll have to vote that down, and then we'll go back to the substantive. If they want to make it a permanent planning grant permanently, well, then the first one falls. But I do think, you know, we've had officered advice. So we take it to the vote. We've got a proposer and a seconder to remove condition 1, which would make this planning application grant. It would be 2, just the wording would be that planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed in the report. Sorry. It would only be condition 2 only on page 17. All those in favour? Any against? Oh, that's carried. Thank you. So So that amendment falls, and we go back to the substantive motion, which was that temporary planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed in the report, and those conditions are listed on page 17 and 18. Can I have all those members in favour? Did you want to debate that further?
I'd like to...
Well, that'll be another amendment.
I'd like to consider Councillor Carter's proposal to at least extend the date to
Well,
the end of
we
the
need to have
year
a
in
proposal.
question.
Are you proposing that? Then we need a seconder. And you're changing the date to the 31st of December 27. Does any member want to comment on that? No? Councillor Armour.
Thank you. So the reason for the initial date was that it ties in with the expiry of the neighbourhood plan. Is that correct?
A 5-year temporary permission would take it close to the review of the neighbourhood plan, and that's where there's more harm involved in terms of the policy conflict, because the longer the temporary permission, the more permanent it becomes, in a sense, even though it's not a permanent permission. So that's the thinking there, as best as I can put it.
And if I may, Chair,
Yeah,
just
come back.
legally, it doesn't weaken us in any way if we change it to the 31st of December, because I personally I'm happy with it to go through with what's on the paper.
I'll just ask legal advice.
Okay, through you, Chair. On the information provided, it doesn't already appears not to be in accordance with the neighbourhood plan, so changing the date from February to December wouldn't have any impact on that.
Councillor Watts?
I was simply going to ask if anyone knew when it did expire so that we didn't try to help by extending it to past when it expired. But it doesn't look like that's the case.
It doesn't. Did you want to come back on any of that? Because it doesn't actually expire.
As far as I
the
understand,
neighbourhood
the neighbourhood plan was adopted in 2021, so 5 years from then would be 2026, provisionally.
So
yes,
2020.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The neighbourhood plan, although it needs a review at that time, it doesn't sort of get cancelled. It's, you know, the policies still remain. Yeah.
Councillor Deering.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a living document, and yes, we are going against the parish council within that remit. I think there are special circumstances for that, but I do believe that it has to be temporary. So from a timing perspective, I don't think it matters whether it's February or December that year, but there has to be a cut-off point at some point to be fair to everybody, especially on the parish side of it.
So we've got a proposer and a seconder that temporary planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed in the report, and that condition 1 be changed from on or before the 9th of February 2027 to the on or before the 31st of December 2027. Is that correct? Before we go to the vote, do any other members want to speak? Therefore, excuse me. Yeah. So we just want to confirm some clarification with officers. So do you want to?
Sorry, apologies, members. I've just noticed in condition 1 where it says temporary C3 dwelling house carers use. I don't know if officers could please clarify what carers means in brackets. It's not a use within the use class order. So what would that mean in terms of the occupation of that particular unit?
If I can, I would consider it as residential rather than a specific type of. It is.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just in terms of enforceability, I don't know if the word carers adds anything because you couldn't enforce that. So, with respect, I would suggest that word carers also be removed, because it doesn't fall into a recognised legal use class.
Happy with that? Yep. So therefore, we will now go to the vote that temporary planning permission be granted subject to conditions listed in the report, and the first condition is changed to the temporary C3 dwelling house, take-out carers, use of Buckwood Barn hereby permitted shall be discontinued on or before the 31st of December 2027. So we've had a proposal, we've got a second. All those in favour? Any against? No abstentions. Thank you. Therefore, that's carried. Thank you very much. Takes us, that's it. We've got no urgent or exempt items. Just before I close the meeting, I just want to